We hope you enjoy The Magician's Moonlighting by Rachel Lawson.
When my eyes last close in the sleep of death, what dreams will come to the sleeper in their eternal repose? Will they dream of heaven or hell? When my eyes last close in the sleep of death, what dreams will come to the sleeper in their eternal repose? Will they dream of heaven or dreamless sleep come to my cold eyes evermore? Will I dream nevermore? Will I dream nevermore?
The Emperor of the Universe sang softly into the vast, glittering hall of the Intergalactic Forum. His perfect lyrical tenor floated like a prayer or a warning. His secret wife, hidden among the dignitaries standing behind him, felt her stomach twist. Something was wrong. His voice was too fragile, too mortal. He finished the final verse, held the last trembling note, and swayed. For a heartbeat, the universe held its breath. Then Fred collapsed. Angela broke. She ran to him despite every protocol, every secret they had sworn to keep. "Fred," she cried, falling to her knees beside him. "Down with the curtains. The Emperor is down," shouted Dante Drac, the stage manager and one of Fred's oldest friends. The velvet curtains crashed shut, sealing the chaos from the audience. Fred was carried to his dressing room, limp as a discarded costume. He looked merely asleep, but Blake felt the wrongness radiating from him like cold. "Blake, Angela, what's wrong with him? Do we need an ambulance?" Dante asked, voice shaking. "No, we can look after him," Blake lied, though his hands trembled. He stared at Fred's still face, then at Angela. "I don't know what to do," he whispered into her mind. Reynard, commander of the Imperial Guard and Fred's adopted brother, stepped forward. His voice was iron. "Take his place. The people will panic if he doesn't return." "He needs me," Blake said, voice cracking. He looked so young then, too young to be the Emperor's shadow. "I'll stay with him," Angela said firmly. "But the Empire needs someone on that stage, and it has to be you." "You're the only one who can pass for him," Reynard added. "You know that." Blake looked down at Fred, his future, his past, his paradox. He swallowed hard. Then he nodded. He changed into Fred's robes, adjusted the Emperor's mask of authority onto his own face, and stepped back toward the stage, to become the man he had not yet grown into. Blake walked back toward the stage with the weight of a collapsing universe on his shoulders. Every step felt wrong. Every breath felt borrowed. Everyone was watching him, counting on him, needing him to be in control. He wasn't human, but he felt painfully human then, scared, unsure, small. Once centuries ago, he had been an emperor in his own right, ruler of the Earth's solar system, a great emperor until the fall. And with the fall came resentment, exile, and the long, lonely drift through time. He had become lost in the past, wearing identities like masks, forgetting how to be the man he once was. Now he was seen as something else entirely, a fallen prince, a relic, a shadow of the emperor. And yet here he was, stepping into the role of the most powerful man in existence. He had been brought back to this time for one reason. Fred had accidentally impregnated his own wife, and they needed a distraction, a symbolic father, a symbolic husband. Their wife, their child, their tangled, impossible family. And that child, Morganite Alexander, stood on the stage now, addressing the panicked audience with the calm authority of a man who had already lived this moment once before. Morganite, Prime Minister of the Universe. Morganite, the time traveler from the future. Morganite, the son of two emperors. Blake stepped into the light. Morganite saw him instantly, saw the robes, saw the posture, saw the lie. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes widened with fear. "He's back," Morganite announced, voice smooth as glass. Blake forced himself to stand tall, forced Fred's voice into his throat, forced the universe to believe. "Yes," he said, in the Emperor's tone. The audience exhaled as one. Morganite didn't. He knew. He knew something was terribly wrong. Morganite could feel the future tightening around them like a noose. With the Emperor down, the Empire was a tinderbox. Every faction that had ever dreamed of seizing power would be circling now. And the weakest faction, the one loyal to Fred's heir, the grand leader of the ex-Serassians, the Greys, the so-called Roswell aliens, would be the first to be crushed if civil war erupted. He watched Blake on stage, trying desperately to channel his older self. Sometimes Blake managed it. Sometimes he stumbled into a confused tangle of words that meant nothing at all. And sometimes he reached up to adjust the mask he wore, not because it was needed, but because it was Blake's nervous habit. If anyone recognized that gesture, the illusion would shatter. The Empire would shatter with it. When the speech finally ended and the crowd dispersed, Blake found Morganite backstage. "How was I, Morgan?" Blake asked, voice small, hopeful. Good," Morganite said, though his eyes were tight with worry. "You need training, though." "Training?" Blake echoed, instantly anxious. "I'll give you some instructions," Morganite said, slipping into the calm, authoritative tone he'd inherited from both his fathers. "Okay, thank you," Blake murmured. Meanwhile, Fred had been teleported to Blake and Angela's home. Safer, quieter, hidden. Angela stayed by his side, and Dante, who worked in the afterlife dimension, just beyond their backyard, monitored him with the precision of a doctor and the devotion of a friend. Blake's other son, Lance Sr., had stepped into Blake's usual role as head administrator of the afterlife. Blake's old life was gone now. He lived as Fred, breathed as Fred, ruled as Fred, but he still visited Angela in secret, slipping through the woods of their enchanted backyard to check on Fred's condition. Tonight, under the moonlight, Angela met him outside. The garden shimmered with quiet magic, the air thick with worry. Blake exhaled shakily. "How is he?" Angela's eyes softened. Still unconscious, still flickering, but stable, for now. They walked deeper into the moonlit garden, away from Dante's watchful ears, away from the Empire's expectations, away from the lie Blake was forced to live. For a moment, Blake let the mask fall. For a moment, he was just himself. "It's a shame he can't be here to enjoy this night. With you, it is wonderful," Blake said softly, watching Angela in the moonlight. She looked almost unreal, as if the night itself had shaped her from silver and shadow. "He is with me. You are him," Angela reminded him gently. "Oh, yes," Blake laughed at himself, rubbing the back of his neck. "I sometimes forget I'm him. To me, he's more of a friend, a brother." Angela smiled at the familiar confusion. and Blake stepped closer, kissing her with a tenderness that belonged only to them. They wandered out of the woods into the open field, the grass freshly cut and glowing faintly under the moon. Angela leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if the night itself might vanish if he let go. "The night is magical," Angela whispered. They stood together, watching the moon drift through the clouds, then walked hand in hand through the garden paths. The enchantments shimmered around them, soft lights in the leaves, the faint hum of old magic, the scent of roses carried on the breeze. In the rose garden, they sat on the alabaster bench, the world quiet around them. Blake plucked a rose and offered it to her with a shy smile. Angela's eyes softened. She took the rose, leaned in, and kissed him again, slow, warm, full of unspoken fear for Fred and unspoken love for Blake. Then, a retching sound shattered the moment. Both of them turned, stood at the edge of the garden, pale and queasy. "Hello, Lance," Blake said, amused. "How's afterlife?" "Hell," Lance groaned. "You're wanted." Blake chuckled. "Nice to hear." "Not by me," Lance snapped. "Dante wants you. The Emperor's had a bad turn." The night's magic broke like glass. Blake's smile faded. Angela's hand tightened around his. The peace was o'er. They rushed to the house, where they found Fred fading in and out of existence, and Dante looking at him puzzled. "I don't understand this," said Dante to them, scratching his head. He added, "He's been like this for a while." "Why didn't you call us back?" asked Blake, frustrated with Dante. "I sent him as soon as I could," Dante said. Blake glared at Lance for not finding them sooner. "Hey, I couldn't find you two," grumbled Lance, feeling Blake's eyes burning into his soul. "What's wrong with him?" Dante asked. "I don't know," said Blake. Angela was crying over him. "He's not dying, he's just blinking in and out of existence. He can't do that. There is something wrong," said Blake, who knew death as a grim reaper, a necromancer and coroner, and death was not like that. The house was quiet after Fred stabilized. Angela had cried herself into silence. Morganite stood in the doorway, trying to be strong. Lance Sr. hovered behind him, pale and shaken. Dante watched Blake with the expression of a man who knew what was coming, but wished he didn't, and Tempest stood at Blake's side, the only one who wasn't surprised. Blake looked at each of them, his family, his impossible tangled time-crossed family, and felt the ache settle deep in his chest. "I have to go," he said softly. Angela shook her head immediately. "No, Blake, please. If I stay, Fred dies," Blake whispered, "and the Empire falls, and time breaks." Morganite swallowed hard. "Where will you go?" Blake gave him a sad smile. "Where I came from, where I was before all of this. Back to the past, back to Camelot." Lance blinked. "Back to being Merlin?" Blake nodded. "It's where the timeline wants me. It's where I belong." Angela stepped forward, voice trembling. "You belong here, with us." Blake cupped her cheek, memorizing her face. "I wish that were true." Tempest placed a hand on Blake's shoulder. "It's time." Blake turned to Fred, still unconscious but breathing steadily now. Tell him I'm sorry, and tell him I never meant to take his place." Tempest's voice softened. "He'll know." Blake faced them all one last time. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me a life I never expected, for letting me be more than a fallen emperor, for letting me be loved." Angela broke then, tears spilling freely. "Come back to me." Blake's voice cracked. "In another life." Tempest lifted his hand, and the air shimmered, a doorway of pale blue light, humming with ancient magic. Blake took one last look at the people he loved. Then he stepped through. The world twisted, and the next breath he took was cold, crisp, medieval air. He stood in a stone chamber lit by torches, the smell of herbs and spell smoke familiar and strange all at once. A young knight burst in. "Merlin, the king needs you." Blake closed his eyes. He was home. He was alone. He was Merlin again. And somewhere far in the future, a woman in a moonlit garden whispered his name into the night. Epilogue. Fred's first breath was sharp and painful, like breaking the surface of deep water. His eyes snapped open to the dim light of Blake and Angela's living room. The world swam, then steadied. Angela was asleep in a chair beside him, her hand still wrapped around his. Dante sat nearby, head bowed, exhausted. Morganite stood in the doorway, arms folded tightly, staring at the floor. Fred tried to speak, but his voice came out as a rasp. "Angela." Her eyes flew open. "Fred." She leaned forward, tears instantly spilling. You're awake. You're really awake. Fred blinked, confused. What happened? Dante exhaled shakily. You were flickering, phasing in and out. We thought. He stopped himself. Morganite stepped closer, jaw tight. You almost died. Fred frowned. But why? What caused it? Silence. Angela looked away. Dante looked at the floor. Morganite's throat worked as he tried to speak. Fred's heart dropped. Where's Blake? He asked. No one answered. Fred pushed himself upright, ignoring the dizziness. Where is he? Angela's breath hitched. Fred, he's gone. Fred froze. Gone where? Tempest stepped out of the shadows at the edge of the room. Quiet, solemn, ancient. Back, Tempest said softly, to where he came from. Fred stared at him, uncomprehending. Back? Why would he? And then it hit him. The flickering, the paradox. Two versions of the same life, too close, too long. Fred's face crumpled. No, he whispered. No, he wouldn't. He had to, Tempest said gently. Your existence was destabilizing. His presence was killing you, and he knew it. Fred shook his head violently. He should have told me. I would have. I could have. There was nothing you could do, Tempest said. He made the only choice he could. Fred's breath broke. He pressed a hand to his face, tears slipping through his fingers. Angela moved to his side, wrapping her arms around him. He saved you, she whispered. He saved all of us. Fred leaned into her, shaking. He shouldn't have had to. Morganite stepped forward, voice thick. He said to tell you he was sorry, and that he never meant to take your place. Fred let out a broken laugh, half grief, half disbelief. He never took my place. He was my place, my past, my future, my brother. Tempest placed a hand on Fred's shoulder. He asked me to tell you something else. Fred looked up, eyes red. What? Tempest's voice softened. He said you were the part of him that learned how to live. Fred closed his eyes, tears falling freely now. And he, Tempest added, was the part of you that learned how to love. The room fell silent. Fred bowed his head, grief and gratitude twisting together in his chest. Goodbye, Blake, he whispered.